One point that the Bible makes that's very, very clear is that the church is victorious. Victorious. Jesus made it very clear when he said that the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. And you know, sometimes when you look at the world today, many people can draw the conclusions that we are just not really victorious because everything seems to be against us. Recently, we have a man that's speaking on our college campuses, and he is assassinated. Assassinated. And it happens the other way around as well. You got to wonder, how much more can we take? John chapter 16, Jesus said, "These things I have spoken to you so that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation. But he says, take courage, I have overcome the world." Overcome the world. Despite all of the rebellion that man and this world portrays, despite all of the greed that we have, despite all of the crime that we have, despite all of the violence that we see, like we've seen recently and continuously, Jesus said, "I have overcome the world." Amen. That means we are going to make it. So easy to get discouraged. I have overcome the world. I understand this to mean that no matter what may happen to us, we are triumphant and victorious in Jesus. He has overcome the world. The gates of Hades will not prevail against it. As you look through the history of the church, it's had its times of greatness and power, and it's also had its times of weakness and apostasy and failure. Despite all of that, in Jesus, we are still triumphant. And yet we at times seem to be so weak and powerless and ineffective. What causes this to happen? Well, there's a lot of things that make this happen. There's materialism. The things of this world that we seek after that are not involving Christ. Here in the United States, we live in a very materialistic society. A society that basically says that you have to have more and more and more and more. And we never, ever seem to be satisfied. The same with the money. We have to have more and more and more. Entertainment. We go after the Hollywood heroes and the stars that the media puts into the spotlight and the limelight. And they make these people out to be gods and idols for everybody else. And now we don't just have to turn on the television or go to the movies or whatever. We just pick up our phone and we watch it. Constantly watch it. Addiction. We become addicted to substances, drugs, alcohol. And this keeps our focus not on God, but on our problems. We serve substances, but not God. Self is an idol. Putting our self in the place of God. Therefore, our self-will is in charge of our life, and God is not in charge. So he therefore does not work in our life as he needs to. Another one is religion. He said, how can that happen? Well, so many people are full of beliefs and attitudes that are about religion, and yet their relationship with God does not ever happen. People decide to do what they are told to do, and they never find a connection with God. Or we can come to church and fill out a form, and we can pray when they tell us to pray and sing when they tell us to sing, but yet we never find that connection. So God's presence does not work in our life as he needs to. It's difficult to believe that in the past 25 years or so that so many people have dropped out of church across the board. America has become a more secularized society. People may refer to themselves as believers in Christ, and yet they no longer identify with any church organization. They do not see the church as being relevant to the society that they live in anymore. It may have been okay 50 or 60 years ago, but those were the old days, and we have modernized now, so we really don't need that stuff anymore, is the response. So why isn't it relevant today? What has happened these past 50, 60 years? Number one is the media. Our news media today, for the most part, is critical of people of faith. When a Christian is interviewed by these media people, they are many times looked upon as dangerous, as extreme, as hypocritical. And so people get the idea that people who are involved in religious faith are something dangerous. Now, if you go back again 50, 60, 70 years ago, there were people who believed, even outside of the church, that Christianity brought a good sense to the culture that they were living in. It brought a sense of doing what was right. Not all cases, but most people looked upon it as something good for society. And yet now we are looked upon as being dangerous, as being hypocritical, and irrelevant to the society that we live in today. And we're seen many times as bigots, homophobes, when the media interviews somebody that has more of a secular mind, they always seem to be a lot nicer to them. Many times they'll get on television and internet programs and talk about stories from the Bible as just simple fables for little children, but not for a rational mind. Our public schools. Many of our own public schools have taught that it's okay to just do whatever you want to do. If you want to change your gender, that's just okay. If you decide to have a different sexual preference or sexual orientation, then that's just okay. Do it if it's good for you. Then there's the church. Yes, the church itself. Many churches are saying that the Bible is just not true and it's not relevant anymore. It just doesn't work for people today, is the response. The concept of experiencing true repentance from sin is not mentioned nor taught. And sin is not called sin anymore, and many times it's just called a problem, not sin. I've had people say that alcoholism is a disease. Well, medically speaking, maybe is, but it is addiction. And if you take the words of Jesus for what he said, and he said that those who serve sin are slaves to sin. So you're hooked because you are a slave to that sin. And we don't call it sin anymore. Many churches have gone to universalism. Doesn't matter what you believe, we're all going to heaven, is what they say. Well, Jesus said you've got to be born from above for that to happen. Well, I guess everybody's going to be born from above at some point, is the response. We also hear from the pulpits many times on television and the internet and other media sources, YouTube, it's about prosperity. Christianity makes you feel good. It brings you happiness. And yes, it certainly should do that. But there's also times in our life where we get down. It's not always prosperity. And many people in our world who are in true Christian churches are suffering persecution and poverty. So the prosperity gospel doesn't really work for them. Because it's only in the United States and Canada where you turn out rich in the business of Christianity. In most cases. And yet, despite all of these problems, all of these challenges, all these attacks from the world, the church is triumphant. Triumphant. Jesus said, I have overcome the world. That means we're going to make it. We cannot ever let the world take us down. The world will tell the church, oh, you're going to have to change when it comes to your understanding of alternate lifestyles. You see. No, we're not. We're going to call it what it is, and it's sin. And whether it's alcoholism, drug abuse, perversion, it's wrong. Period. Some of you might be starting to say, oh, you're just so old-fashioned. No, I'm one who still believes this old book. This book says that people who rebel against God are going to have to face his wrath. We're not all going to heaven, I'm sorry. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7 that only a few people find that narrow way that leads to life. Most of them are on the road to death and destruction and condemnation. Period. The church is triumphant. The gates of Hades will not overpower it. Despite all the attacks of the world, despite all the attacks of Satan, the church will be triumphant. it is so easy to become discouraged with what has happened to the church. Yet the church is triumphant. You see, the church has gone through a lot of different periods. It starts out in the first century as a strong, powerful institution. We saw this presentation a few moments ago of Paul and Silas being in that prison. And they're singing hymns. They're not crying in there. I'm so locked up. I mean, a lot of us would. We don't like being locked up and beaten like that, and chained. They're in there singing hymns. Earthquake comes and frees them. But it's not long after that that compromise starts to take place. And the church says, well, if you want forgiveness, you can come and give us a donation and we'll give you forgiveness. And this goes on for a long time. We have a Reformation in the 16th century. We have the revival movements that happened with Wesley and Whitefield. And then we've had, in the beginning of the 20th century, this liberal attack by some liberal scholars that say there are just some things about the Bible that just didn't really happen. It couldn't have happened. And today, as I said earlier, we face all these things like universalism, the prosperity gospel, and the watering down of just saying, let's just be good people. I want to read a passage to you now from the book of Revelation, chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12 and verse 17, it says, the dragon, some of you may know that this dragon represents Satan, was enraged, that means very angry, with the woman, that involves the church. And he went off to make war with the rest of her children. In other words, Satan is definitely attacking the church, all right? Who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. You see, there's always been a group of people, despite all the apostasy that has happened, all of the attacks upon the church, all of the false teachings that have come in, that still hold to the testimony of Jesus. They still believe the Bible. They still believe the commandments of God. That's not just something optional, but something that has to be done. Because that's what he calls us to. And we make up all these excuses today. Well, you know, they're just really confused right now. That's why they're involved in so much sin. That may be true. But the fact of the matter is that we are all in sin in some way. And the only way out is through Jesus. There are those who've always been Christians, even during what was called the Dark Age period. There has always been times when the liberal scholars have questioned the Bible. And yet there are always the true people of God in the midst of it all. And there will be to the very end of time. In fact, I'm one who believes, and some of you may agree with me, if you don't, that's all right, that the more the church has been weakened, there are those who will only become stronger and stronger and more like Jesus. In that book, The Great Controversy, page 464, Mrs. White writes these words. Before the final visitation of God's judgments upon the earth, there will be among the people of the Lord such a revival of primitive godliness as has not been witnessed since apostolic times. Can you imagine what that's going to be like? Primitive godliness. Despite all of the world's continuous downfall into more moral depravity and rebellion, there will be people of the church that are going to experience a revival of apostolic times. You know, since apostolic times, a revival of primitive godliness. The Spirit and power of God will be poured out upon His children, and at that time many will separate themselves from those churches in which the love of the world has supplanted the love of God and His Word. Many, both ministers and people, will gladly accept those great truths which God has caused to be proclaimed at this time to prepare a people for the Lord's second coming. I have overcome the world. The gates of Hades will not overpower it. It's a wonderful hope, isn't it? We can be in His eternal kingdom despite everything that is going to happen that will come against it. We're going to get there. Yes, the church has experienced persecution, apostasy, revival, and liberalism. Despite it all, God will have a people that will be ready for His coming. I'd like to read this passage here in Ephesians chapter 5 that's so important for us today as well. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 25. Some of you, I'm sure, know it, but it's very, very relevant for us here today. He says, Paul says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave Himself up for her, so that He might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that He might present to Himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. Holy and blameless. No matter what happens, we're going to go home, and we will be God's people forever. Yes, it's easy to become discouraged, but if we keep our focus on Jesus, folks, we're going to make it. We'll become more and more like Him, holy and blameless. Thank you.